What up, what up, what up? Welcome back to another edition of Green with Envy here on the 617 podcast, proudly brought to you by Crowworthy. As always, this is your boy Will Ware checking in. Hope everybody is having a very happy holiday season, getting ready to go celebrate with friends and family. Please be responsible. We know this shit is crazy out there, so take the precautions that you need to. And joining me as he does each and every time, my best friend, co-host, and the coach of the podcast, the one and only Greg Manakis.
What's good, bro? And today, since we have such a special guest, I'm going to take away Coach because, our special guest knows way more about basketball than I do. So today I'm just another co-host.
Yeah, that actually sounds pretty appropriate with that. And so, we're not going to beat around the bush today. We're going to get right into this. Joining us here on Green with Envy, back for a second time. He is a legend in the city of Boston. He is the human dynamo, a.k.a. Dana Barriosi. And I mean Dana Barros for real. What's going on, Dana?
What's Gucci, people? I appreciate you bringing me back, man. So, again, it's an honor to be here. Appreciate it. Let's get it.
Yeah, man. Yeah, we're happy to have you back here as well. Before we're going to definitely get into the Celtics. We're going to get into the NBA. We got a couple of stuff that we want to kick around with you. But before we do, man, I saw just a couple of weeks ago that you're going to be going back to BC. You're bringing back into the BC fold as a consultant. So I wanted you to talk a little bit about, what that role's like and what it means to you to be going back to BC and being able to do some work with them.
Well, I mean, that came about, and I give all the credit to the new coach, Earl Grant. I would say maybe a day or two after he was hired, he hit me on the jack, and I was like, Coach who? He was like, Coach Earl from BC. And I was like, oh, okay. Next day after that, he came through the gym, and we chopped it up for like 2 hours, and he asked me, what I thought was the most important thing from my aspect of the program. And I said, just reaching out to people like me, people who played, people had a lot more even success than I did when they were there. And so we just came to the conclusion that he was just like, hey, man, I come on in and I need you to help me with that. And I was like, absolutely. So that's how it came about. He gets all the credit, 100%.
So what's it going to take to get BC back to the NCAA tournament, man? We haven't been there in forever. I don't know if you remember, I'm a BC guy myself, right? I'm class of 2011 right here. So when I was there, that was Reggie Jackson's time. We also had Tyrese Rice there, I think, when I was a freshman. Maybe he was a senior. But we haven't had much success since Al Skinner left. So what do you see? And the coach's name is Earl Grant?
Yes.
Okay, what do you see from Earl Grant that you like, that is going to take BC back to NCAAs?
Well, I mean, I think from the gate, I love his enthusiasm, but as someone who played at the highest level, that doesn't win games. You know what I mean? So, and he understands that he has a tough road ahead of him. He said that right out the gate, because it just hasn't been a foundation set for him. So I think from my standpoint and from the alumni standpoint, what we're going to try to do is just to help him get the right players in the fold. That's the most important thing. I don't care who you are. If you don't have the players, it's not going to matter. So I think that's where I, can really reach out to the old players. There may be Troy Bella's in St. Louis and there's a player in St. Louis, hit him on the jack. Troy, I need you to holler at this, see if you can, blah, blah, blah. So I think that's where I can use my resources more so to help Earl get the right players, because it's going to be a tough year this year. He had to bring in some players that there wasn't a full roster. You know what I mean? So he had to bring in players in to fulfill the roster out. So that was just a tough foundation for him to start from.
How tight is that BC NBA alumni, group? Because I know this is something very similar to what you're talking about. I've heard Jared Dudley speak about this as well, about, his post. This is before, like maybe about a year or so ago, that he was saying, once he's officially done playing with everything, like something he really wants to do is get back and, help BC get back to where it was. Because you talked about, that stretch with Al Skinner where he had Jared Dudley, Troy Bell, Craig Smith, Sean Williams, Tyrese, it keeps going on and on. Like that was probably the, especially in the last 20 years, certainly the peak of Boston College basketball. So for that alumni group, how tight knit are y'all that it's, it's something that y'all have been maybe talking about in your inner circle?
Actually not so.
Okay.
It's we're kind of spread out. We may have little groups that played on a certain team might come back to a game or two. But there really hasn't been that continuous bring back cohesiveness of the alumni. And I'm sure there's been some aspects of it. I don't want to knock anyone who's been there, but I just think consistently that hasn't been the case. And if you look back in the 80s, I mean, there was some two Sweet 16s, a Final Eight. And then you had the Huckabee, Curly, Isley year where they went to the Final Eight as well. So there was some really, really good teams and eras there through some bad times as well. But I think we should really salute those teams that, got to the space that we really want to get back to.
For sure. And you've been posting a lot on IG lately, at Dana Barros 3. Make sure you go follow our guy here. And you've been posting a lot of old clips from your playing career, man. So, like, I was wondering, what has that process been like for you going back and watching these old tapes? First of all, do you have like a room full of all your old game tape? Like, what's the process been like selecting the games that you post?
Well, it's crazy because I just got on Instagram about a year ago. Like people was like, what's your Instagram? I don't have none of that. No Facebook. I didn't do none of that because my mindset was, I don't need someone from 20 years ago finding me. If you ain't in the circle, you ain't in the circle, right? Like if you ain't in the circle, then that's my dead. So that was my mentality from not getting involved in none of that. But as owning the business, and having like over 400 kids in the program, and they were like, yo, come on, man, like you got to get out of the 1990s. So I actually got on last year, and I'm gonna tell you right now, it's been an amazing process for me to sit down and do this by myself, because I'm now really seeing myself and what my career really kind of was. It was such a blur to me. I couldn't remember a game if you asked me, but sitting down looking for certain clips, now I'm watching full games, like, okay, I'm going to watch this whole game and I'm going to see if I can get 4 or 5 clips in this game. And it's amazing to see, that kid from Mattapan did that, it's amazing. I'm telling you, it's like opening my eyes to actually how good I was. I was always a humble person, but I'm like, damn, I was a bad little, more tight, that's my mentality from all that. But I love it, man. It's been an eye-opening experience.
Yeah, that's so dope to think about, like having that perspective now, all these years later, to be able to look back and, like you said, actually like sit back and be like, damn, this is what I pulled off here. So I'm curious, as you're going through and you're rewatching these games and you're trying to think about which clips you pull. Then when you go to the process of posting, whatever it be, whether it's because you do some that are from college, some that are from the NBA, whether it's with Philly, the Celtics, whatever it may be, do you try to match up that clip with something that maybe is going on in your world as far as, as a coach, as a business owner, something that's going on in the NBA, something that's trending? How do you decide what clip, or is it just, I know I busted a couple of dudes on this one. This looks cool. This is what the people need to see. How do you go about selecting that particular clip that you want to post?
Well, I try to get teaching moments. Like sometimes I just throw something up funny, be like, yo, I killed this dude right here.
Yeah. Just one of those days.
Yeah. Sometimes I may take a video and I'll say, okay, this is like the last post I post was coming off a down pin, square up, curl and shoot. And I'll put that in the caption and I'll try to teach kids, and I'll say footwork, in the notes, and just try to teach kids not only play the music to it, but give them a little mental, seed that can grow. But I used to be a DJ, so I used to be, and when I was in Philly, I learned from the greatest DJ ever. For 2 years, I used to go to Jazzy Jeff's house, DJ Jazzy Jeff's house. This dude was scratching with a shoe, with his elbow, spinning around, toothbrush, like, bro. So he was teaching me so many things, and I became this incredible DJ by being around him for 2 years and going to his house and watching him. So when I'm watching the clip, I'm like, oh, I start bouncing to the clip, like, okay, what am I gonna put in here? What goes with here? Then I start searching for the words in the music part of the gram, So then I'm like, okay, I'm shooting a long jump shot. I need a Draco. I need something with a Draco in it, That's how it goes down. So it might be a 10-minute process for one post, but I try to get good music, a teaching moment, and a clip that will capture people so they don't just look at it for 3 seconds and swipe. So it's a little process of a 3-step process, but I'm enjoying it, definitely.
Well, everybody's enjoying it, man, myself included. It's been great because, like, as a kid, I got to watch you on the Celtics, and I was a huge fan. Obviously, we discussed on the last pod. But like, I haven't seen all of your games. So whenever you post this stuff, especially from college, like I wasn't watching your college games. So it's really cool for me to see, what your college career was like. Cause I just knew you went to BC. I didn't really know how much you were hooping at BC. And then you posting clips of you like getting up. I didn't remember you having so much bounce, dude. You had bounce.
Yeah, I was in Chicago. I think I had a 43-inch at the combine, So
Damn.
I was super athletic, man. I tell you, like when I was on a visit at Boston College, I ran a 4.340, so twice because I was on a visit and the team, they raced me against some fast kid on the team, and I ended up beating them, and it was timed, and they said, nah, that wasn't the right time. They said, you got to start over and do it again, and I ran it twice. So athleticism was something that I was really blessed with, but I think when you combine that with a relentless work ethic, that's when the bomb goes off. You know what I mean? So I think that the work ethic, more than the athleticism, brought it all together for me.
Yeah, and before we transition here, I want to talk about the Celtics this year. But before we do that, any Jazzy Jeff stories, any party stories you want to share with us here, or you can?
Please.
Jeff he didn't do parties, man. Like I'm gonna tell you, he had the illest condo I ever seen because the first Dave and Buster's ever was in Philadelphia.
Okay.
And what they did was they took an old cruise ship and they welded it to the dock and they knocked all these walls out and created condos inside the cruise ship.
Yo, is that right on the water?
Right on the water.
I was in Philly a couple months ago. I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah, and Jazzy Jeff lived in the condo overlooking the water.
Okay.
And so he was married. He was just chilling. And we just would go from Dave and Buster's playing pool all night, and then he would come to the Sixers games. And then I did see him at the All-Star game, and we're in the locker room, and then Carlton walks in, right? Carlton.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna tell y'all, like, I'm thinking the dude had an act on TV, and when he walked in the room, it was like the Fresh Prince the show was on right there, because Will was talking to him as crazy as hell as he did on the show, and he was the exact same person. But Jeff was just a laid back, cool dude, so humble, man, but unbelievable what he did with the turntable. So salute to my guy, man. And he remixed my single that I had on Basketball's Best Kept Secret.
Nice, man. That's awesome. I had to ask a question in there. We couldn't just pass over that without digging in just a little bit. So appreciate you sharing that. But with that, let's talk a little bit about this year's Boston Celtics team. So as we're recording right now, we're recording just before the Celtics are about to play the Knicks on a Saturday night. Celtics right now 1 game under 500 after losing to the Warriors on Friday night. This season has been, we talked off air. COVID is just everywhere across the league right now, and it's destroying lineups. It's destroying, games are being moved. So that's a whole other issue that's starting to leak back into the league. So separating that for right now and just kind of on as close to a normal season as we've had up until about the last week or so. This team has struggled to find kind of its consistency. What have been your high level thoughts just on the Celtics as a whole this season, sitting right around that 500 mark?
I think you said the word exactly, just inconsistency. And I think that goes across the board in the league. I mean, you've had injuries, and you've had people have slow starts. If you look at New Jersey with James Harden, you would expect them to be better even without Kyrie. The Lakers have struggled. The Clippers have had injuries. So to me, it's been a really open season. I love the aspect of it being more of a balanced league, not having those juggernauts just running through the league. Golden State is surprising, but the Celtics are just like every other team, Milwaukee, New Jersey. They've had good moments and bad moments. Players have had, good seasons, sections of the season, and bad sections of the season, as you see with Tatum, who's playing unbelievable right now after a slow start. So I can't even judge the league right now. It's just like, if I could say, this team, you could say Golden State's going to be, I don't know, man. Like, I don't see them sustaining that, 20-5 pace. I just don't see them sustaining that for 82 games. So I look to maybe more around All-Star break. You'll be able to get more of a feel on what team is kind of coming into fold and who's playing better at that time, because it doesn't matter who's playing well now. But yeah, the Celtics are kind of, not digging themselves a hole, but they're putting themselves in a position where they may have to play, a road series in the first round. You know what I mean?
For sure. And you mentioned Jason Tatum and how he's having, an unbelievable last 15 games. He's been killing it, averaging like close to 30 points, maybe even over 30 points at this point. A lot has been made about the lack of shooting on the Celtics roster, or actually on the court, that in Ime's rotations. So I was wondering, from your perspective, how important do you think it is for the Celtics to add more shooting onto the roster or into the rotation to help a guy like Tatum and to help a guy like Brown?
I think that's the most important thing. I mean, I can't even tell you, man, how I watch these games, and people who shouldn't be shooting threes are shooting threes, but because of the way the game is being played, you have to take that shot just to give the defense or the opponent the suggestion that you could make it. You know what I mean? Like, and that's just it's tough to watch sometimes, man. So Golden State winning those series and having the shooters that they had set a precedent where teams are trying to duplicate that process without the shooters that Golden State had. So, and it's not just the Celtics. It's every team I watch, every game I watch. It's 12 for 48, 12 for 41. It's in the 20s, 3-point shooting across the board, and it's kind of it's ugly to me. So, and I would put the Celtics in that category as well as the rest of the NBA. It's just bad, man. It's bad. And as a fan, it's just, in the 3-point shooter, it's not enjoyable. Even me, I'm a 41% shooter. If I miss two, I'm pump faking and taking the dribble. I'm doing something. I'm not going 1 for 14 by just taking 14 3. I don't understand it, and the analytics are there, but the feel of the game and the sense of the game for me, from a fan standpoint, has to be like, yo, I could do that.
And that's one of the things that we've talked about with the way you broke it down with, continuing to take that shot that, is not necessarily part of your game. And even for a guy like you, who very much was a part of your game, you still have to try another plan of attack. And it seems like this year, a lot of the offensive flows the Celtics have, if a guy like Dennis Schroeder or Josh Richardson, who aren't necessarily 3-point shooters by trait, but if they go 2 for 4, they go 5 for 7, yeah, the offense looks great. But they got those games where they go 0 for 3, 1 for 7, or whatever it may be. And that's when you find some real problems. So that kind of brings us to another guy that we want to talk about, which is head coach Ime Udoka, who's a rookie head coach. And, Greg and I, we have kind of this like give and take that we have with him of, we get frustrated sometimes with whether it be some of his rotations or substitutions, that patterns that he's going through. And a lot of times there's a lack of shooting. We'll talk about, Peyton Pritchard and Aaron Nesmith here in a minute. But then we also have to remember he's a rookie head coach. And just like a rookie player, there's kind of these, you got to kind of get over some of these hurdles. You have to learn on the job as you're going. So before we talk specifically about Ime, what experiences do you remember during your career working with either young head coaches or rookie head coaches, and how they kind of evolved, just like kind of almost like a player would?
Well, I think just from being around the league 14 years and having 11 coaches in 14 years, some of them young.
Yeah, that's an impressive number, man. I tried looking it up earlier. I didn't realize it was that many.
Crazy. So the one thing that, I see with a lot of coaches is you can't script what's going to happen. So you could be a coach and have all these analytics over here and have all these plans over here. When the game starts, Johnny isn't playing well, so that plan goes out the window. Who's going to put in? And just across the board, it's a shit show. You know what I'm saying? It's like, okay, I got to do this on the fly. And that's really how great coaches are able to be successful, because if player A, who's an all-star, is 2 for 12, Pat Riley is going to sit him down if that guy behind him is 4 for 6. And to me, that very few coaches have that. So a new coach has to, find that line where Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, Giannis, or whoever the coach is and whoever the player is, that line is I can coach you, but I'm not crossing that line to where you're not accepting the coaching. And that's a tough line. And each situation is different. Each player is different. And I think that's still a process he's figuring out right now, because adversity, there's been a lot of talk about, like you said, the substitutions, who should be playing. That's coming down on his shoulders, and he's going to have to handle that internally with the players as well. And that's just a process that can't be mapped out. That's going to have to be done on the fly, no matter what situation or who the coach is.
That's interesting you bring up the word script, because that's actually something that Will and I have talked about a lot. Is it seems like Ime, and it makes sense, right? You go into the game with a plan, and then when you are comfortable enough, when the game slows down for you, maybe you can deviate from that plan, right? That's the famous Mike Tyson. Everyone's got a plan until they get punched in the mouth. And the Celtics right now, when they're getting punched in the mouth, it doesn't seem like they know what to do, right? And Ime himself, there have been times where even like somewhat obvious offense, defense, situational substitutions towards the ends of quarters and towards the ends of games, he hasn't really made those substitutions. For example, like last night in the game against the Warriors, I thought it made a lot of sense to get Josh Richardson off the floor when they needed a three-pointer. And instead he left Richardson and Smart. Smart ended up hitting that three-pointer, right? But he's not the guy you necessarily want. And Nesmith had been playing okay in that game, right? He missed some shots that could have been really game changers, momentum changers in the game. But like, what are you seeing from Ime in terms of that script that you mentioned? Is this something that you're noticing with him, or is that just like an idea that you brought up about all coaches in general?
Well, I think it's kind of been a continuation, because here's the thing. When you have a situation where, let's say, damn, I lost my train of thought with that. Let's say Peyton Pritchard and the players who aren't playing a lot, who normally played before. And it's a continuation, I think, of like I said, about the shooting. Damn, I had an exact point I was trying to think, but I'm ready. I got that.
Yeah, this happens to us all the time, man. This is literally after every show. This is the conversation Greg and I have.
Because it might come back to me. Like let's have.
Yeah. So I was talking about like the offense defense substitutions, right? And you had mentioned. Yeah. Go ahead.
Okay. Now to me, it's in the last 2.5 to 3 years. There's been a continuation, whether it's been Brad or Udoka. It doesn't matter to me, because the difference in the whole Celtics culture is, no matter how they shot 3 years ago from the three-point line, and they were taking a lot of threes in, defensively, they always were in the game, because defensively they were sound. They would be no more down than 10 points at the most. They wouldn't get down 25, because defensively they were sound. They were together. They were more of a unit. And I think that's the difference. And that's been across the board, I think, from 2-3 years ago to now. So the shooting may have been just as bad then, but they were a defensive unit. I remember we used to talk about defensively how sound they were. They were one of the best, 5 to 10 best defensive teams in the league, switching everything. And that just hasn't been the case to me. So if you're going to take those type of shots and change the substitutions every game, I think you have to go back to that hard nose where Marcus Smart made his foundation. And you got to stop teams defensively if you're going to play like that. And that's across the board. I don't care who you are. You're not going to – and that's why you see wild swings from half to half maybe. You might see a 10 3-point half and you're up 12 and you're 10 for 19. And then the second half, you're 2 for 14. And then that 12-point lead goes to a 13-point deficit, and everybody's sitting looking around like, what the hell just happened? But that's what happened. The 3-point shooting went away, and the defense just hasn't been the same for the last couple of years.
Yeah, you mentioned a couple guys earlier when we were in this conversation, Peyton Pritchard and Aaron Nesmith. They're two guys I want to talk about for a minute here, because both of them are guys, young guys, second year in their career, but they're billed as shooters, very much like you were in your career. And so something that, we've been asking for, and we're talking about now, it all comes down to how do we get more shooting, the way the game is played, yada, yada, yada. We've gone into this a bunch, but what I really want to know from a player perspective, and maybe you have a time in your career that you can think about it where, maybe you weren't getting the playing time that you thought you were, but you knew you had to be ready. Because that's where I kind of think Peyton Pritchard and Aaron Nesmith are right now. And as a shooter, that's a lot of pressure, man, because if you're not getting the minutes, but then all of a sudden your number's called, like right now with all the COVID, Aaron Nesmith got a lot of playing time last night. Romeo goes out. He might get a lot more playing time, for the game tonight in the next couple of weeks. So now he's going to get his shot. So how mentally as a shooter do you stay prepared and stay ready, knowing that maybe you're not getting the, 8 shots a game that you'd like to be getting, but when your number's called, you got to go make it happen?
Yeah, that to me is something that I take great pride in, and I feel like I was always prepared for that. And that to me is a technical thing. I have stayed after and went to the gym early before practice and done the 100 shots and took the 500 shots and all that. But to me, the most important thing that I've ever done was, and you see right here behind me I have my basketball sitting around. Every day, I would just sit on the couch and I would do this. My technique was so sound that when I went to the game, I never felt like I was off. I was long or short. If I was left or right, something was wrong. I was hurt. You know what I mean? So to me, going to the gym is fine. It's great. To me, if you're not technically sound, it doesn't matter. Like you can take 500 of these all day. That's not going to work on a consistent basis. So that's how I stay ready. I constantly was prepared physically and mentally. I was never on a team or in a training camp where someone was in better shape than me. And I got to the point where I would mentally fake hatred for the coach so that when he put me in, I wanted to prove to him so bad and make the fans say, we want that. You know what I mean? I wanted to play so well that he would have to play me. I would create these hatred scenarios where I would talk for a week. And then hopefully he would throw me in the game and I would shoot the ball every single time I got it. So I played games mentally to almost to the point where if I get that shot, I dare you to give me a chance. Almost. So that's all. That's the only way I can say it. You have to be technically sound, mentally and physically sound, and take advantage of those opportunities, man.
For sure. So with somebody like Nesmith, and I guess you could talk about Pritchard too. You talked about technique. Do you think that Aaron Nesmith, just like his shot is fundamentally sound right now? To me, it kind of looks like there's like a slight hitch in it, which is leading to a lot of variation in terms of like the actual trajectory of the ball. Like sometimes I think he shoots a very flat ball, and other times I feel like he, especially off a catch and shoot, I feel like he shoots a very flat ball. Do you like his form right now, or do you think that there's like a little bit of a hitch in it, as I'm seeing?
Me, if you ask me that, you could show me 100,000 forms, and I will say I don't like none of them. That's not an indictment on him or anyone. There's probably only 4 or 5 people in the world that I say that's good form. So
okay. So who would you say has good form?
I think, obviously Steph. Anyone who was in this 3-inch window, I would say has good form. The closer you are to having your elbow straight is great form. Now Reggie Miller didn't have great form, but somehow he figured out crazy release to shoot 38, 39% and be somewhat consistent. You know what I mean? So I think it's more of a rhythm thing. When it took me at least a year of coming from college, playing 40 minutes a game, getting 20 shots a game, to playing behind Gary Payton and Nate McMillan and saying, damn, I got 2 shots. Like, I don't even have a rhythm. The first shot I took was an air ball over the back, over the rim off the backboard. That's an adjustment period. And if you don't know how to handle that, because rhythm is the most important thing on the court. I don't care if you're an NBA All-Star, top of the game player. If you miss 2 weeks, I guarantee you your rhythm and timing will be off just in 2 weeks. So that to me it's a rhythm and timing thing. When you shoot the ball of a shooter, when you watch a shooter shoot the ball, it's almost effortless and smooth. You never see rigid shooters, going 9 for 10. You see someone just flow, free flow, almost going in slow motion, and you don't see that. And that's the point you're making, is there's no rhythm in that shot. And I think the Celtics have so many guys across the board that could bring something a little different. You never probably get into a rhythm where the same 8 or 9 guys are playing. You know what I mean? Josh Richardson may bring something a little bit different than Neesmith or Pritchard. And so a next game, I might need that little extra over here. You know, there's not 8 guys where you say, okay, these are my guys and I'm rolling with these guys. Udoka has to constantly, today, let me see if I can get Prick some, we need some, it's so there's not a set rotation for him yet. And that's due to injuries and a lot of guys that can do some different things that have to be settled down into a more, maybe a set rotation as the season goes on.
While we're talking about shooting, Steph Curry was just in the building the other night. Obviously, earlier in the week, he went ahead and became the all-time three-point king, dethroning Ray Allen. What were your thoughts watching that this past week?
Just amazing. I mean, people say shooters, and they start naming off all these shooters. In my book, there's guys who can shoot, and then there's shooters. All right. If you can dribble off a pick and roll, left or right, come off a down pin, fade, curl, then you're a shooter. You can do everything. You got mid-range, pump fake, one dribble, give up. Then you're all around. You're the great. You can call yourself the greatest shooter like Steph. But I think we get mixed up in a lot of guys who stand in the corner and make 41% on standstill jump shots. I don't put them in the category that he's in. He's a totally different animal. Myself, I was an off the dribble shooter. You might see me taking standstill shots, but to me, my favorite shot was full speed dribble, stop 3 feet behind the line, pull up on the break, straight on the rims, like that. And the amazement that I get watching him handle the ball to get a three-pointer off is what just blows my mind, because he's going forward, backwards, step back to the right, crossover between his legs, then step back to the left, and then shoot the ball going backwards, stop, and get your momentum forward. That is amazing.
Is that what makes him so different and really separates him from any of his, I'm going to use quotation marks here, his peers, because he really is kind of a cut above. But is that what makes him so different?
I don't even know anyone else who could do that. You know what I mean? Like, dude, I see myself as someone who can shoot every kind. I cannot, set a back all the way up to 3 feet behind the line, catch and shoot the ball like that. That is an amazing talent. And I think his technique, and this is for all the young shooters out there, if you watch him, his technique is special because, like myself, he releases the ball at the earliest point. He can never have a hitch because the ball is gone right as he reaches his apex. And that's why you always see guys reaching up late after the shot is gone. It's such a quick release because it's gone on the upward, path of the shot. And you see Naismith, or you see some guys may hold it for a half a second or there. He doesn't get to a point where he has hitches because the ball is gone so quick, and that technique it allows him to shoot from 35 feet.
Yeah, it almost looks like a glitch. Like even in slow motion when he's shooting, when he's coming up to this point, you expect the ball to like stop right there, and it just doesn't. It just like fires forward, and just like even somebody like JB or Tatum, like there's that little moment, like that slight hesitation where the ball comes to a pause. That it makes him special, man. It makes him rare. And I just wish there were more guys that could shoot the ball like Steph, because it's just a beautiful thing to watch. And then, as you said earlier, you got all these people who think they're Steph Curry trying to be like Steph, and they ain't Steph.
Right, definitely. And I tell you, and that's the thing about technique, and that's the thing about technique where we talk about, and I try to teach young people where most people shoot like this. All right, which is going off to my right. You might see it differently, but it's going off to my right. And what I explain to them is that if I'm playing you and you shoot this way, I'm going to make you go this way because the hoop is that way. And if you shoot like this and the hoop is that way, how can you make the shot? It does. It's the physics doesn't. You can't even create an equation to make that happen. This is, spin ratio, trajectory, like velocity times. That's a physics equation. This is distance.
Yeah.
That's it.
I actually remember you saying that, like, back, we talked about how we were your campers back in the day. I remember that exact thing. You say, like, I will never miss right or left. Like, I am missing short or I'm missing long. And like, even as a coach to this day, like, I still tell my players that. I'm like, once you get that fall through down, you should never miss right or left. It's always straight. It's always short or always long. But as long as you're on line, then you're good, right? Then you just got to figure out the distance of it. And I've just been stealing your advice for 20 years now. So thank you.
See, this is why Dana's the coach of the podcast right now.
Right, exactly. So there's another guy that I wanted to talk about today. He just made his return last night, Isaiah Thomas with the LA Lakers. So first of all, do you have any relationship with IT?
I spoke a little bit with him on Instagram one day when my son told me that he said he was going to watch Dana Barros' video. So I immediately jumped on and hit him up, and with respect and salute. And just being, part of the organization, I was at, there for those games. I was a part of that, sitting in the stand, doing events at the games, and just utterly amazing, man. That guy's shorter than me, he might be 5'8", you know what I mean? So to see him get back in the league and to see him, hopefully healthy and to re-solidify himself, that would be great for me because he's been through a lot, and I love to see the under guy and little guys like that get it done. But his time in Boston is legendary for the couple of years that he was here. Legendary, bro.
Yeah, and that's, the crazy part about that is he was here, I think it was 2.5 years. I don't even think he hit 3 years. And yet you look at that stretch and, to this day, every time his name gets brought up, somebody like will tweet at Greg or I like, yo, what do you think? IT back in Boston? It's like, this dude has this legend that continues to go on. And even actually, Marcus Smart the other day was quoted as saying he was hoping the Celtics would have been the team that reached out to IT. And I know for, a lot of Celtics fans, a little cringeworthy seeing our guy, IT in the purple and gold out there in LA. Not exactly the phrase. I want my guy to thrive. I want him to, do his thing and get back in the league. Lakers would have been my ideal choice. But, when you hear a guy like Marcus Smart say, like, I wish we had brought in IT, do you think IT could have been a valuable addition to this team? Now, granted, he had a great debut, so we'll see kind of where he's at physically, but do you think IT could have made some sense to bring into the Celtics?
I think just on a pure basketball standpoint, absolutely. But when you have Schroeder and Marcus Smart, I'm sure Marcus doesn't want to give any of his time away. You know what I'm saying? No matter who comes in here. I don't care if Jordan came in, he'd be like, nah, he ain't taking my time. So, I'm sure he from a basketball standpoint, he thinks that. But I think he's in a good situation where they need a true point guard to me to bring the ball up the floor. Rondo hasn't been playing. I think he's a much better scoring option. Obviously, I love Rondo, but his ability to score, again, that threat just spreads the floor, wide open for AD if he's healthy and LeBron. But thinking back on his days, that overachievement when he was here in those years kind of created that sense of we're here. But it was such an overachievement at that time. I think that has put a stigma on the organization as we should be better than what we did at that point when you really overachieve so much. And then the next year you get back there, even with Kyrie, the next year but you're now set that level where maybe you should have been the second or so to me, that sets you on a precedent that may have not been legitimate at that point. And now it may be legitimate, right? But in between that time, you keep saying, we should be better. We should be better. But in my opinion, those achievements of Isaiah and the other players on those teams overachieved to the point where I think it hurt the expectation levels of all the fans in the NBA. And you've kind of been struggling in that middle range to to get back there because the expectations are so great now because of those over things that you did in the couple of years where he was here. So he's really set a precedent of winning when we were supposed to be rebuilding.
For sure. And we always say that on this pod. I'm stealing this from Jalen Rose, but he says success is a function of realistic expectations, right? So we talked about this on our first quarter report cards that we did a couple pods ago. And we were saying, like, what should we actually expect from the Celtics moving forward in this season and, for all the players individually and collective as a unit? So what would you say is a realistic expectation that fans should have for this team?
Well, I think I would definitely get to that second round, and definitely you should be one of the, 3 or 4 teams that are in that Eastern Finals competition. You know what I mean? I think year in and year out at this point, from a fan standpoint, from an organizational standpoint, I don't see how you can't expect yourself to be at that level, which we have been, for the past 4 or 5 years. But again, the expectations, we haven't been able to get over that hump. And I think, that Miami series to me was a big series because that was something that we could have grabbed and it would have gave us that notch and that confidence. And we could have actually exceeded those or achieved those expectations. And we had it, to me, right in the palm of our hand, but just didn't get it done. And to me, I think that just kind of, when you don't reach that point and you come back the next year, you're expecting that again. And I just think we go through that year after year and everyone else is getting better, bro. Chicago's better. Miami's better. Philly is taking a step back, but if they make a move, they could be just as good. So the East is better. I believe it may be just as good, if not better than the West. So even though we've maintained a level of success, the level is moving down, and then, in terms of the competition catching us, so that's really a combination of us leveling off at an expectation where we feel we're almost there or are there, and everyone else is moving up.
Yeah, Dana. And before we get you out of here, man, with about 50 something games left in the season, what is going to be the biggest X factor for this year's Celtics team to take that next step? Because like you said, everybody's been getting better. So how do the Celtics over these next 50 something games, what's going to be the biggest X factor for them to find themselves in that top 3 to 5 in the East? Let's just say staying out of the play-in.
Well, obviously Jalen getting healthy is the most important thing. Those two guys together on the floor create a tremendous problem for everyone. So I think that is the most important thing. But again, trying to figure out a rotation of 8 to 9 guys, you know what I mean? That win, lose, or draw, these guys are my guys for 3 weeks or whatever. I'm not going to give you indefinitely, but set that tone to where these are my guys. And thirdly, most importantly, in my eyes, getting back to that grimy defensive squad. You have the athletes to be that. You have the Richardsons and the Naismiths and the big guards, and then from that standpoint to be grimy on defense. And until you get back to that style and controlling the game and the tempo of the game from a defensive standpoint, not from a 3-point standpoint, I think the success will just grow from there. So to me, that's the key. Getting back to keep holding teams under 100 points. And believe me, we're not only winning, but you'll be in every single game you play in.
For sure. And you said 8 to 9 guys, and there's one guy that I just want to touch on really quickly. Dennis Schroeder, right? He's on this 1-year deal. Do you think that Dennis Schroeder is going to last the season in green, or do you think we're going to move him?
Well, I mean, I think he'll last. If you move him, I hope you get something very comparable back, because I think he's done a good job for us. And, it hasn't from the beginning. I think it was a little tough, but I think in the last 10 to 15 games, he's played pretty well. So what are you going to get in return from that? It's a lot of question marks. I don't think he's, a main one at this point.
Okay.
I think, again, the rotation, figuring out, who's going to be the guys that's going to be around the 3 core guys or the 2 core guys. And those are the most important guys to me. And I don't think it can be change, game to game or week to week. It has to be some rhythm on the court between those 8 or 9 guys, and I think that'll come into fruition, before the All-Star break.
Yeah, man. And Dana, it's always a pleasure having you join us here on the podcast. And to that point, I think what we got to do is bring you back on sometime, maybe around the All-Star break. We'll do a little mid-season check-in because to your point, we still need a little bit more data to figure out what's going to happen with this NBA, and especially where, this second quarter of the season looks like COVID is going to play a big role. So we're going to have to bring you back on. We'll check in around the All-Star break, do a little, mid-season check-in. But while you got a second here, man, please go ahead and plug anything about your business, your IG, anything you got right here, man. Go ahead and take the floor.
You guys can check me out, Dana Barros 3 on Instagram and DanaBarros3.com. My website, I got a 5-court all wood facility. Beautiful. We have over 45 AAU teams. We go year-round clinics, Christmas camps, school vacation camps, you name it. Again, DanaBarros3.com. And I appreciate you guys. And looking forward to coming back on soon. And hopefully this thing will be turned around, and I look forward to us talking about a 10 out of 12 win streak and going into that All-Star break, bro.
Yeah, we hope so too, man. And but before we sign off here, when we get in the Menakis music and the Dana Barros collab, we talked about that last time on the pod, man. We gotta get a new song for the podcast here.
Definitely. What's crazy is I'm actually went to the studio twice in the last 2 weeks. My son is doing like a little EP, so I'm gonna be on like 2 or 3 songs with him. I've been searching, trying to find a father-son album. We ain't found a hip hop father-son album yet, so we're trying to make history. So I'm gonna come out the basement, dust the crates off, and but definitely, man. In the next couple of weeks, we'll get up. I'm already in the studio, so I'm in that space, bro.
I like it. All right, so I'm gonna send everybody out of here. First of all, Dana, if you see my high school basketball coach, he's the head of A Step Ahead Basketball. I know they're always playing at Dana Barros basketball. So Brendan Smith, if you see Brendan Smith, just say what up to him for me. Tell him that you were on the pod. He was asking me, he was like, do people actually listen to your podcast? I was like, Coach, believe me, people listen. Like, we got Dana Barros on the pod. We got all these like famous people in the industry on the pod. So make sure you let him know that this pod is legit, because I don't think he listens to it, man.
It's official. Y'all got follow. Y'all got racks, man, and the followers.
That's what I'm saying. All right, everybody.
Let them know, bro.
Appreciate you. And we're gonna send you out of here with some Black Sheep Optimists and just one piece of advice. And I'm paraphrasing from Dana Barros: shoot. If you ain't a shooter, please stop.